let them introduce them when the time is right. So I do want to give the opportunity for Ellen from the Palm Beach chapter to say hello to her members and greet everybody as well.
Hi, thank you so much. We are thrilled to be a part of this opportunity, and thank you to Jennifer and David for doing this presentation. Any opportunity where we can all collaborate as fellow fundraisers in South Florida, I think is terrific. So we are thrilled to be here. Thank you for Stephen for making this connection. And it's a great opportunity and it's free. And I'm just really anxious to learn about all this untapped resources out there. So thank you to AFP Palm Beach County members for coming out and taking some time to listen to this presentation. I hope everybody gets a lot out of it. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, Ellen. It's a pleasure to work with you on this. And I know we have a couple board members from both of our chapters on today's presentation. So if you're a board member, just raise your hand and say so we can say hello. Thank you all for your hard work and all the work that you do throughout the year for all of our chapters. And Ellen, hopefully this is one of many that we'll work on together.
I think it's terrific. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ellen. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. It's my pleasure and privilege to welcome Jen and David to Florida, to South Florida. So David Richner is a former Microsoft and Amazon executive who co-founded World Reader, a nonprofit with the goal of getting 1 billion people reading through digital books. And as CEO of World Reader, David has helped get digital books to over 15 million children in the developing world, including Ghana, Kenya, Jordan, and India. Now with COVID-19 creating an education crisis here in the United States and all around the world, David is bringing World Reader here to offer a digital reading program designed to keep kids reading and learning. So welcome, David. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks.
And Jennifer Risher, is it?
That's correct.
Yes, okay. Jennifer Risher is the author of We Need to Talk, a memoir about wealth that tells a story about getting lucky and explores the hidden impact of wealth on identity, relationships, and a sense of place in the world. She believes that staying silent around topics like philanthropy creates problems for both those who have money and for our country as a whole. Money shouldn't be a taboo subject, and silence perpetuates the status quo and keeps us from learning from each other. So welcome, Jen, and welcome, David.
So much. And thank you so much, AFP, for hosting us and having us here, and everyone who's tuning in. We're going to talk about donor-advised funds. So we'll start off by just explaining what is a donor-advised fund. These can be kind of opaque and difficult to understand. So it's basically a charitable vehicle that I can put my money in. I get my tax break up front, and then I can give over time. So it's sort of like a charitable checking account. The money I put in, I cannot get back. It's irrevocable. So it's there for charity. And as it sits there, it can be invested so it can grow tax-free. And there's no moment at which I need to move that money through. So it's, in some ways, it's a nice organizing mechanism for me as a donor, because I can decide over the course of a year or two where I want to give my money. There are three kinds of DAFs. There are the big national DAFs. These are the Fidelities, Schwabs, Vanguard. These have most of the money in them in DAF accounts. And then there's community foundations throughout the country, the Napa Valley Community Foundation or the Chicago Community Foundation. These community foundations also house DAFs. And then there are DAFs that are really focused on single issues, religious DAFs or educational DAFs. But one of the things you should think of when you think of DAFs is it used to be, 10 years ago, you had to have a lot of wealth to have a donor advised fund. Probably it was $25,000 and up to kind of open a DAF. Over the last few years, it's really kind of the amount you need to open a DAF is, in fact, with Fidelity now, you don't even need any money up front. You can just open a DAF. So there are 870,000 DAF accounts throughout the country. And the DAF accounts are now smaller than they used to be. So many people have donor advised funds.
So why do people put money in DAFs? And by the way, why should you care? Well, as Jen said, every single one of these DAFs, 870,000 of them, are basically little tiny charitable accounts. Sometimes, by the way, not so little, sometimes in hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes much smaller. And every single one of those charitable accounts is attached to a person or a family. Now, why did people put money into those in the first place? Well, a lot of the times they've had some sort of liquidity event in their life. And that's a sort of technical and not so beautiful term, but it just basically means they came into some money. Maybe they sold a small business. Maybe if they were lucky, they were part of a company that went public. Maybe it's an inheritance. But in any case, often a financial advisor will recommend opening a donor advised fund when you have one of these liquidity events, because it's like giving to a charity in the sense that it offsets some of the gains that you've had in your life. And that yields certain tax benefits. You know, it means that you don't have to consider that taxable income, which reduces your tax bill at the end of the year. So that's a lot of the reason why financial advisors kind of promote these DAFs. But from a sort of bigger picture perspective, they also give you time. So they allow you to offset the taxable event in your life from the decision-making event on where to give your money. If you want to give your money away, a certain amount to charity, but you don't know where, a DAF is a good way to kind of time shift that. Get the tax break now when you need it, but then decide down the road. It also, and this is a little bit more technical, but it allows you to do certain things like give non-cash assets. You can actually in DAFs put unappreciated stock, even stock in private companies in some cases. So for technical reasons, sometimes you're not ready to give the asset away to liquidate it and give it to charity, but you kind of want to hold it tax-free. And if you're comparing it, and this would be for wealthy people, if you're comparing it to setting up a foundation, it's very, very simple. I mean, it really is no more complicated than setting up a checking account at a bank and can be done basically in a day. So it's a very simple way to kind of, and I guess something we didn't explicitly say here, once it's set up, it's a sort of organizing vehicle, as Jen said. You know, kind of like a bill pay service would be another way to think about it, where you sort of push a couple buttons and you make your donations instead of having to write individual checks. So why does this matter to people on this call? Well, there are not only over 800,000 DAF accounts, there's $140 billion that have accumulated in donor advised funds over the last years. And that number is probably an under accounting of the total amount. Just $140 billion. And it's worth pausing on that number for just a second. That's like, I mean, so you guys are in Florida, you're familiar with NASA. So NASA's annual operating budget is around $20 billion. This is to send, you know, satellites up and to send people to the moon and all the other things that NASA likes to do. Well, look, they could fund themselves for 7 years just on what's sitting in DAFs today. And every one of those dollars at the end of the day has to be used for charitable purposes. They're all going to 501c3s, you know, someday. So the reason for our conversation today is, you know, how do we collectively motivate that money, move it through this system that's been, you know, so successful over the years at accumulating charitable assets, or charitable dollars, but less successful, we would say, in moving them out.
So you may be asking yourself, well, why aren't people moving money out of donor advised funds? It's a good question. One, it's very easy to put the money in because you get your tax break and it's just very simple. But then moving it out kind of becomes harder, and there's nothing that is nudging you to do so. So when we started this Half My DAF challenge, we started to hear from people about why they aren't moving that money through. And some people said, you know, I forgot I had a donor advised fund. So they, you know, their financial advisor tells them, put some money into this charitable vehicle, and then they continue on with their life. And people also said, you know, they're busy. They're, you know, heads down, they're working. They're kind of thinking, well, I'll get to my philanthropy or I'll get to charity later, maybe when I'm older or maybe when I have time. But life happens and people just don't take the time to think about these things. And even people who are very thoughtful and want to do the right thing, want to give, there are many people who just feel overwhelmed by all the need and all the different ways they can give or places they can give. And we hear this over and over, you know, people feel like they have to do a bunch of research and they have to figure it out. They have to do it perfectly. And the fear of getting it wrong really keeps people stuck. And that's a big problem. I think as nonprofits, this is a way for you to think about approaching people donors, potential donors, and thinking, let me help you. I mean, I think as human beings, we all want to do the right thing. We want to make a positive impact in the world. So if you can partner, think of your donors as partners in a cause, and help them do what they want to do. And then the last thing that we've heard is people look at that money in their DAF, even though it's no longer theirs. It is in a 501c3, a DAF. They think of it as an asset rather than charitable dollars. They look at it and they're like, well, I kind of, I like seeing it growing as far as an investment. And it's just a kind of human thing, but we're hoping to inspire people to not think that way.
Exactly.
If I could interject for just a moment.
Sure.
I'm sure a lot of you are having questions as we're going through this, and this is certainly a topic that's really timely. I mean, that's a lot of money that's sitting there. So if you do have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. I'm sorry I didn't mention that at the beginning. I apologize for interrupting your presentation. But please, if you do have a question at any point while they're going through the presentation or while anyone is speaking, please feel free to put it in the chat, and we will get to it at the end. We just don't want too many interruptions like what I just did just now. So thank you all so much, and please put your questions in the chat. We'd love to have some questions that we can review at the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
For sure. I think that was Jaime. So here is, so let's now move a little bit away from kind of the overview and start to get sort of more specific. Because if you're a nonprofit leader or a fundraiser, you're probably wondering, well, how can I kind of get access to this? And the truth is, there's no one magic, bullet here, but there is a bit of a philosophy, which is, let's just start by remembering that behind every DAF is a person or a family. And so the first thing to just sort of think about to yourself is, this isn't just about a technical thing. This is about how can I reach out to a set of donors who've already identified themselves as people who want to give charitably. So think that in the back of your mind. But then how do you sort of tactically do this? Well, the first thing is, if you've been running a nonprofit for a while and you have a database of your donations, it's really important to look through that database and identify people who might have been DAF holders or who are DAF holders. For sure, if you've gotten checks from Fidelity or Schwab or Vanguard or Mellon, which are the big national DAF holders, and there are more, but anyway, that's a big flag for you, and it deserves being tagged in your database as a DAF holder. Community foundations too. And community foundations will usually be pretty easy to identify because they'll sound like the Miami-Dade County Community Foundation, whatever it might be. And often again they come by check. That too, community foundations are DAF holders, they're DAF sponsors, and they, I would say, of the two, are often, because the goal of many community foundations is to help local communities thrive and get money to them philanthropically, they are often willing to have at least a conversation about not just that specific DAF holder, that's a one-to-one thing, but introducing you to more people who might be interested in your cause. So getting to know your community foundation for sure, is quite helpful. Board members and ex-board members. A lot of the times when people join boards, people always talk about time, treasure, and talent. Well, that treasure piece, is in many cases housed in a donor advised fund. And if you zoom out a little bit, really you might say that anyone who's given you a donation of, this is an arbitrary number, but let's say $10,000 or more, chances are pretty good that they're giving, in multiple ways, and maybe through a donor advised fund. Even if it didn't come to you that way, it may well be that people are also using a donor advised fund, or at least have one above a certain level. As Jen said, donor advised funds can be at any level. It's not just for the sort of wealthy and super wealthy, but once people get into major giving, typically they're at a point in their life where they may well also have a donor advised fund. And then you can ask, flat out, and we'll talk more about Half My DAF in a couple of seconds, but this is something, so as Jen mentioned, I run a nonprofit called World Reader. We've been around for about 11 years now. And we, on our pledge forms, particularly when we get multi-year pledges, we just ask, flat out, do you have a donor advised fund? And that allows us to tag people in our database so that then when we do campaigns that are very focused on donor advised funds, it's easy to segment away. And we've never run into anyone who is in the least bit uncomfortable sharing that information. Typically, again, this is something that was set up by a financial advisor, some time ago, and with the intention ultimately of giving the money away. So then once you've identified them, it's all about activation. And here again, just to repeat the message, really treating anyone who's a DAF holder as potentially a high capacity long-term donor is the right mindset. Now, some of this is just straightforward, donor stewardship 101 of showing them the impact their gift will have right now. That's, we say that, even though it's so obvious, man, is it sometimes easy to forget how much donors like to hear directly where their money is going and what the impact it is having. And so those stories that you're accumulating for all sorts of reasons, they just become all the more relevant to people like DAF holders, because again, DAF holders have identified themselves in a certain way as being, let's say, more charitable than the average person. We say address multi-year gift issues here, because technically DAFs are not allowed to fulfill multi-year gifts. It's a little bit of a strange thing, but the way the DAF actually works is you as a donor are actually you're advising the donor advised fund to give money to the nonprofit. That's a distinction that frankly is a little bit artificial, but in any case, the letter of the law says a DAF shouldn't be a way to satisfy a multi-year pledge. So if you flip that around, if you're in the business of asking your donors for multi-year pledges, which I would always encourage, particularly for larger donations, for cash flow visibility and just predictability. And a person says, well, hold on, I have a DAF, how can I do that? It turns out there is actually a mechanism for doing that. It can either be a soft pledge, or you can actually set up in some DAFs a multi-year payout. It's just like a bill pay system that, where you get pinged every month or every year, on the 1st of May, $5,000 goes to, organization X for the next 3 years. So, and all this is just to say, these are conversations to have, but treating them like a potentially high net worth individual and then talking to them about kind of the mechanism. And a lot of the times, donors will be a little bit undereducated about DAFs themselves, and they'll appreciate the fact that you're bringing that information to them. So that's sort of on the outreach side. Then, one of the things that I've learned over the years is if you make things easy for people, they tend to do more of it. And so there are a couple of tools that you can use. There's a tool called DAF Direct. You can Google it. And DAF Direct is a little website widget that you stick up on your website. And it sort of functions the same way that a credit card widget might work. But instead, it allows you basically to link for a person to give directly from his or her DAF. A little drop-down thing that says, do you have a DAF at Fidelity or Schwab or what have you? You put in the number, and then it's linked to your tax ID number as a nonprofit, And so it allows the donor to do it in a sort of single step or 2 steps. Yeah. So important.
Yeah, and I share this from my own perspective. When I get a newsletter or something where I want to give, the local public schools sent out a thing recently, and I had the option to write a check or to give from my credit card. And when I give from my credit card, I'm going to give less. And also then you as a nonprofit have to pay a fee. So it's just it's so easy if there's that DAF widget there, if I can give directly from my DAF, it makes it easy for me, and I am going to give more because I have that money sitting there. It's all charitable dollars. So it's okay, there it is. I'm going to give more. So make it easy for me as a DAF holder to give you more.
For sure. And that $250 credit card donation could turn into $1,000 because a person says, gosh, I've got this money sitting here, let's put it to work. And then the second piece is a little bit more, again, technical and administrative, but on the receiving end, if you're a nonprofit and you receive DAF notification, in olden times, it would come as a check. During COVID, that's particularly problematic. We actually just found out at WorldReader that we had a check sitting there for 4 months because no one had actually been looking through the mail carefully, the physical mail, and our offices are physically closed. So electronic funds transfer, EFT, is a mechanism that some of the big DAF sponsors have. Fidelity certainly does. And literally just, Google, Fidelity DAF EFT, and you'll get a 1-page form that you fill out. And 48 hours from now, you'll get your DAF. When you get money coming from a DAF, it'll come electronically right to your bank account. Just makes it easy for you in this case. Then the last thing, which will set up sort of the second part of our presentation, is create a sense of urgency with incentives. I think every nonprofit knows one of the big structural problems, let's say, of running a nonprofit is you have a big issue you're trying to address, but often, there's not necessarily the same sense of urgency in your donors that you feel around the issue, even as important as it might be. But that brings us to a program that Jen and I kind of developed last year, which we'd like to talk to you about, called Half My DAF, which can inspire a little bit of urgency in your donors. So we'll kind of flip over to that now.
Yeah, this came about about this time last year. We were sheltering in place. The world was collapsing. The stock market was collapsing. There was so much need. David was feeling it as a nonprofit fundraiser that the donations are drying up. He can't hold his luncheon. He can't, fundraise in the ways, normally he would be doing. And our hearts were just going out to nonprofits in general. I had, we were just thinking, what can we do? I sort of doubling down to places that I had already supported, but we wanted to do more. We're in a very fortunate position, and we thought, well, how can we just give to nonprofits that are so much in need, helping people in need right now? And with that in mind, like our hearts going out to nonprofits, we were also highly aware of all this money sitting in donor advised funds. So we thought, well, how do we let's link the two, and let's invite others to join us so that our dollars go even further. So we came up with the idea of Half My DAF, and we challenged people who are DAF holders that if they commit to spending down half of the money that's in their DAF by September 30th, this was last year, we would start matching grants. And we didn't care where you give wherever you'd like, as long as it doesn't promote hate speech or gun violence. We will match wherever you want to give. And we put up $1 million in the form of matching grants. And we said, start giving, commit to half your DAF. And in the middle of July, we'll make matches, and then we'll make matches again at the end of September. And our $1 million ended up moving $8.6 million from DAFs to nonprofits in just 5 months. And technically that's an incredible, success. We were very pleased. But it also was a success in that it started this conversation and started to build a sense of community among donors. Donors told us, this is really the nudge I needed. And I'm sitting around the dinner table with my adult kids. We're talking about where we want to give, and we're having conversations about money and that we wouldn't otherwise have been having. People said, I've encouraged my parents to give from their DAF. So it's been really wonderful to feel that sense of community. And we found this community is happening between nonprofits and donors as well. Yeah, this was initially what we heard, people, when we first started to reach out to people said, well, I have my 3-year plan. I'm already planning. And our answer to that was, the nonprofits you're supporting might not be around in 3 years if you wait. This is the moment. This is the rainy day. Give now. And then at the end, we did hear all these wonderful stories of people thanking us.
So as Jen said, our goal, and this is back last year, but it continues to be this year, is to inspire DAF holders and people who are DAF donors to give now, to start moving some of that $140 billion out. And so at the end of last year, this was at the end of 2020, we sort of took stock and we said, gosh, that's the $1 million that we put up moved, a total of $8.5 million out. What can we do next? And people started to ask us that, what are you doing for an encore? Which kind of took us by surprise a little bit. We weren't sure this was going to be a multi-year thing when we started it, but anyway, there you go. So we decided to sort of re-up for 2021. And we've been very, very fortunate in so many different ways. The donors that participated last year encouraged us to do it again. We had some partners and other families who said, we'd actually like to come in and help enlarge that matching pool. In fact, our daughters did the same thing. Our daughters are in their 20s, and they decided that they also wanted to come in and help us increase the size of the matching pool. So the bottom line is this year we have over $3 million to give away, so 3 times as much. And we've done a couple of things to what we hope improve and also sort of show up a little bit with some of our own values with this form of the program. So $3.1 million in total, over $1 million, just like last year's, to any organization. Doesn't matter, what you do, as long as you're a 501c3 registered in the US. And then you'll see here education in underserved communities, racial justice, environment and climate, and reproductive health. Each of those categories are almost sort of subpools that effectively increase the chance of any one of these matches happening. We decided that and some of our donor partners decided we really wanted to focus on these areas, which we consider to be some of the most important in the world right now. And so we can answer questions about this later. But bottom line, if you're a nonprofit in any one of these categories, there's an even greater chance you're going to get matched because there's more money going to specific organizations, or to organizations that focus specifically in those areas. Just like last year, we're giving the money away twice. The first one's coming up in just about a month on May 15th. And then, more broadly, we have a goal of doing exactly what we're doing here and trying to help people understand how DAFs work and how they can help nonprofits really achieve their goals. This is just a screenshot. You can go up to the Half My DAF website at any time, and you'll see the organizations that were funded last year. There were over, remind me, Hun?
900 grants were made, and 750 nonprofits were supported through Half My DAF.
Exactly. So you'll see them all up there. You'll see, we call it the Half My DAF Heroes page, and you'll see the last year's organizations as well as this year's. And every single day we get new grants coming in. You'll see the amount of the grant there, and then you'll see, in the case last year, how much the matches were. So, the idea here is that every single person here who's running a nonprofit, ultimately we hope will show up on this because you'll have talked to your donors, and every single donor who's on this call, you'll be inspired to give more, because guess what? This is a great way to leverage your giving. Your money can double or more.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce Rob and Betty. First, I'll call on Rob just to hear from a couple of nonprofits who are out in the field. What are your experiences with DAF, and specifically, I know Rob has experience with Half My DAF. So Rob, thanks for joining us.
We'll stop screen sharing for a second so you can all see each other. And we will also acknowledge and enthusiastically say that today is Earth Day, Rob. So good day for you.
Happy Earth Day. Thank you very much. Thank you for this invitation, and thank you for all the great work that you're doing. Such a wonderful opportunity to talk to professional fundraisers, because I'm not one. I run a nonprofit. My name is Rob Williams. My wife, Erin Ash, and I co-founded Oceans Initiative just after our daughter was born. We are a team of scientists on a mission to protect marine wildlife. And we do that here in the Pacific Northwest. I'm Skyping or Zooming you from Seattle. We study a critically endangered population of killer whales that's down to 74 individuals. It's on its way out unless we can make their habitat cleaner and quieter and get them more salmon to eat. On the East Coast, we work with critically endangered North Atlantic right whales that migrate from Canada to Florida. And we have to help them avoid getting struck and killed by ships and not get entangled in fishing gear so that they can survive and reproduce and recover. We're based here, we're grounded here, but at least pre-COVID, most of our work was involved taking our expertise to countries with fewer resources to do conservation environmental work than we do. So we work on protecting river dolphins in the Amazon from Brazil through Colombia and Peru. We have a number of programs trying to make fisheries more sustainable in Chile and Peru. And in Indonesia, we work with fishermen and also do a lot of work there on ocean noise. And I think because I am the chief scientist and the co-founder of Oceans Initiative, it gives me something of a unique perspective, I would hope, from a fundraising professional's point of view, because my wife and I have taken the organization from zero to its current size, $1, one grant, one gift, one contract, one relationship at a time. And I think now is as good a time as any to remind people, don't want to embarrass you, Jen, but you really ought to, if you haven't yet, read Jen's book, because my sisters and I are the first generation in our family to go to university. We did not come from a background where we knew what a donor advised fund was. We didn't talk about philanthropy or charity. It's just not my background. And so these discussions are particularly difficult if you weren't raised in that environment. And so I think getting people to talk about money has been extremely helpful. And I get a unique insight into those donor relations, even though I'm focused solidly on a mission, because we're the co-founders. And I think that's helped us create sort of a culture of giving, a philanthropic culture, where everyone in our organization recognizes that the money has to come in for us to be able to do the good conservation and climate work that we do. So I thought I'd mention 3 sort of examples of how DAFs have affected the work that we do at Oceans Initiative. And I thought I'd start with the sort of small examples. I had never heard of a DAF 3 or 4 years ago. I started receiving some checks. Gosh, it's like Jen and David were looking over my shoulder and cherry picked those examples. It's literally how they described it. We would have, a handful of checks that came from Fidelity Charitable Fund or Schwab, a few from the Seattle Foundation. We were very lucky that the University of Washington has a professional fundraiser certificate program, and someone who has helped our organization, her name is Karen Sinclair, is our development professional. Fortunately, she kind of researched who's behind these checks and tracked down names from the Seattle Foundation, not necessarily because we thought we'd get more from them, but rather because it's a core value of ours that we have to send everyone a thank you gift or a thank you card, even if it came through the Seattle Foundation. So one of those donors then contacted us and said, it's really difficult for me, just as David and Jen said, to tell Seattle Foundation to send you a check. Can you just put this widget on your website? Which I thought was very tech savvy of a woman who's in her 70s, but she said, just download this widget and put it on your WordPress website. It took me less than 5 minutes. And all of a sudden, checks for $500 or $1,000 started showing up in December. And it was wonderful because we were able to put those unrestricted funds, and in every case, these have been unrestricted funds, not earmarked for any particular program area. We've been able to put those towards the projects that we believe in deeply, but have never had the resources to have a line item in the budget to give them the attention that we think they deserve. My wife, Dr. Erin Ash, started our Women in Science program at Oceans Initiative. That's a perpetually underfunded program area, but it's vitally important and consistent with our core values. So that gets funded through these unrestricted funds. The work that we do in Indonesia, there's this wonderful day on the Balinese Hindu calendar called Nyepi, which is the Day of Silence. And they shut the whole island down for 24 hours. They shut down the airport, the shipping ports, the fishing ports. All of the wealthy tourists are sent back to their hotels, and you sit in your hotel and draw the shades, and everyone's quiet for 24 hours. And so the colleagues that I have in Indonesia were asking, do you think the noise levels drop in the ocean when people stay home? And of course, we went back there with this unrestricted funding and at one particular foundation grant, and dropped hydrophones, underwater microphones in the waters around Bali, and found out that if we're still and quiet, like we were when COVID hit, the noise levels drop, and the whales and the fish and the dolphins can communicate over an area 16 times larger than when we have all of our boats and ships and airplanes flying over. That's something that would be difficult to raise through foundation grants, but unrestricted funding allowed us to do that. And then, of course, COVID hit. And my wife and I have a daughter who's 6. She turns 7 tomorrow. Like all parents of young kids, we were floored when this hit. The school was closed. There was so much uncertainty, and we felt powerless. And we just thought, what can we do? And we realized the whales and the dolphins and the turtles and the sharks and everything that we study have some appeal to the kids who are affected by COVID and the school closures. So we launched a virtual marine biology camp, and we decided twice a week at 11 o'clock, which is what the Brits call 11s for coffee break, we'd bake something, we'd bake cookies, and we'd have twice a week a session with kids from 2 to much older, and we'd just answer their questions. And they sent in drawings of whales, and we just tried to give parents a break twice a week where they could be in a safe space to learn about the ocean, ask questions. We brought in a watercolor artist, gave a painting class. It was just fun. And of course, the last thing we could do at that moment when we were all under so much stress was to charge for that. So we didn't want any financial barriers. So we had to be able to make it available for free. And the donor advised funds, the unrestricted funds, allowed us to make payroll while we were offering this service that met our community's needs without necessarily having the revenue to support it. And it paid off. We reached 30,000 new students. Kelly Clarkson profiled it on her show. It ended up in House Beautiful of all places, but it worked. And then all the kids got a certificate that they graduated from marine biology camp, and it was great fun. And we couldn't have done it without donor advised funds. Well, around that time, we had this check out of the blue from Half My DAF. And I still, to this day, don't know which anonymous donor signed the pledge, but one of our DAF donors had signed the pledge and had told the Rishers that he or she or they had supported it. And we received a check out of the blue for $10,000. I think that's the sort of medium scale, modest, for our group at least. That's a hefty check that can do a lot of good. It came at exactly the right time because during COVID, we managed to pivot. We formed socially quarantined households so we could still do our field work on the orcas, on the salmon, on the seals, but we couldn't pay for the boat because the boat we were all under lockdown. So the boat still has to be paid for with, all those expenses. If you're a marine biologist, you need a boat. That was the one expense that we couldn't replace. We couldn't pivot. The boat had to be on the water. So this completely out of the blue check kept the boat working. And then of course, now we're doing 4 times as many field projects as we were doing this time last year. And we were able to do that because the funds came at exactly the right time and they were unrestricted. So thank you, Jen and Dave, David, and thank you to whoever gave the anonymous donation that triggered that. I owe them a thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate all those wonderful stories. And I'll turn it over to Betty, who will share some stories.
Thanks.
For sure. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Betty. I am with the Jackson Health Foundation here in Miami-Dade County. We are the fundraising arm for Jackson Health System. So we raise money for all of the different components under the umbrella of the Jackson Health System, which includes Jackson Memorial, Jackson South, Jackson North, the urgent cares, Holtz Children's Hospital, the rehab hospital. We are the largest public health trust here in the state of Florida and one of the largest public health trusts in the nation. So as a member of the foundation, our foundation, you would think large health trust, large foundation, not the case. There's about 12 of us at the foundation right now. And really in the development team, there's currently actually, there's about 4 of us that fundraise for the system as a whole. So as you can imagine, I started right before COVID hit. I started November 2019. So I was just getting my feet wet here. I have a long history of nonprofit fundraising. I see some familiar faces on this. So I kind of wanted to get my feet wet with Jackson and just kind of familiarize myself with everything that we do and all the different areas of fundraising that we have. So COVID hits and now we've all gone remote. So much for familiarizing yourself, even with the campus, which is an overwhelming campus, it's huge. So even just becoming familiar with all of that, it kind of went away. So I took it upon myself to kind of go through my one tool that I had, which was RE. All of us are familiar with RE to a certain degree, and familiarize myself with all of the different donors that we had. And as I went through my portfolio and looked at some of them popped out at me. And this is something that Jen and David referred to, and it was a community foundation. So I went through a lot of the different community foundations that have had an existing relationship with Jackson and thought, all right, well, this is the time to reach out, kind of touch base, see what we can do. And one of the particular community foundations that I reached out to, ended up reaching out to them kind of like mid-year. By the time I reached out to them, it was about end of May. It was the Key Biscayne Community Foundation. It was a foundation that has been a long supporter of Jackson, longtime supporter of Jackson. But the gifts always came from the foundation themselves, even though they managed donor advised funds. So I kind of, just reached out. We kind of shared, war stories during COVID, what successes they had, what failures. I was telling them about what we were going through, cancellation of all the events and the fundraising, what have you. And that kind of went on and it kind of morphed and they wanted to learn a lot about COVID. We hosted Zoom sessions for them, for their staff. And then that kind of grew where we brought together our medical directors and a team of medical physicians to actually host a Zoom for their donor advised funds, their own family foundations that they run. And these were all people that were just interested in kind of learning, like kind of drowning out the noise and getting the facts. So because of that initial call, a couple months later, that led to a couple of Zooms. A couple of months after that, that led to, so in retrospect, the largest gift they had given us was about 5,000. So cut to, we started to develop a really nice relationship with them. Through the Zoom, we met some of the other family foundations that are managed by them. We were able to kind of touch base directly with them, explain to them what Jackson was all about. And as a result of this, the $5,000 gift has turned into a 6-figure gift. So 2 of the family foundations gave us double-digit gifts, and they themselves gave us a pledge for a triple-digit gift. So that grew exponentially. And again, it just started as a touch base call to see how they were doing. And that kind of grew. And again, we were in a good position because we were a healthcare organization. I had the availability to bring on the epidemiologist and the doctors, and it kind of fit the need that they were looking for. But the timing clearly was great. And the fact that we reached out was phenomenal. So now to this day, we're working with them almost every day. I'm in contact with them almost every day because it's either their members, their staff. There's always a question. There's always a concern. So that's one. And I wanted to also touch upon what Jen and David said about fidelity. We always had a relationship. Obviously, when we get the donor advised funds and we get the checks from Fidelity, I had never actually gone to the Fidelity site and signed up as a charity of choice. It's a really quick, you need some of the basic information of the 501c3 and what have you. As a result, our giving just from other donor advised funds that we would never have received from has gone up significantly. In the last 2 weeks, I got $45,000 from a foundation that chose us off their site. So that was something that has been happening and it's been trickling in. And obviously 1 gift of 40 isn't huge, but you get 4 gifts of 40, that's significant, So those are my stories. It's nothing really revolutionary or earth-shaking. All started with a phone call. Again, the Zoom led to this and then to that. And then we were able to come to terms, sit down and sign that agreement and bring them up to a 6-figure gift, which has been phenomenal.
It's awesome.
Yeah, great stories. Really appreciate that. Thanks, Betty. We can answer some questions now, or do you want to finish with the?
Yeah, let's just finish with just one last slide. That was awesome, both of you guys. And I think, they both really reinforce this idea. Hold on, move into presentation mode. Reinforce this idea that it's not that these tools are particularly revolutionary in and of themselves, although things like the widgets and signing up as a preferred nonprofit are super important. It's really more of a mindset that this is a group of donors that are sitting out there, and kind of if you focus on them, you may be able to unlock a lot more than you realize. So here are a couple of steps just to make it super clear. Our website gives you an overview of the way the program works. There are even some samples. You can also Google, as Rob was saying in the chat session there, his nonprofit and quite a few nonprofits have kind of taken some of the iconography and the messaging from our website and repurposed it for as donor outreach, and that's awesome. That's the way this should work. So use it as inspiration. Reach out to your donors. You've got a very simple message, which is this is a way for you to leverage your giving and to potentially get a match for our organization right now when we need it. We've got 2 dates coming up. May 15th is the first one, and then building those relationships. Remember, this isn't just one and done. This is what we would hope would be the beginning of sort of a new and deeper long-term relationship, as Betty was kind of just describing for us. So that's what we got. We'll stop sharing our screen now. Maybe take questions and so forth, and yeah,
wow, thank you, Jen, David, Betty, Rob. That was really, really fantastic. And I see someone just commented that this is the best investment of their time in a long time. So fantastic and really great to hear not only your stories, but really, Jen and David, how you've broken this down for us. And all of us on this call are fundraisers who are working with DAFs. And like you just mentioned, we may not even know we're working with DAFs. We may not have segmented that list, and we may not have really done a push to target DAF holders. And this is really a fantastic way for all of our organizations to maximize the giving that we can reach this year. And thank you for making that commitment and that pledge and this challenge. It really takes donors like you to make this happen. I mean, leveraging that amount of giving with that challenge gift is just fantastic. I hope that someday I don't know if it's the Lilly School of Philanthropy or somewhere, they do a case study on this, because it's really, really fantastic what you all have done. And we're really I'm in awe, and I knew a little bit about it before, and before this call, obviously we've been in communication, but hearing the stories and seeing this presentation has been really great. So at this point, we'll give folks an opportunity to ask questions. You can either do one of two things. You can raise your hand or let us know. I've got you guys in gallery view so I can see everyone's faces. You can either let us, sort of raise your hand on Zoom, or you can put a question in the chat and we can give you an opportunity to ask your question. We have about 35 or so folks on the call. This is really a great opportunity. I see there's already a hand raised. You can either raise your hand physically, or I think there's an opportunity to raise your hand sort of virtually as well. So I see James has a question. So James Eccles from Life is Art has a question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, brand new computer, so I'm still figuring, making sure things work. So my question is, as I mentioned in the chat, I went ahead and installed the DAF widget while I was listening to the Zoom. Took 2 seconds, super easy. And I'm also testing the DAF link, just posted on our Facebook page. And so I have a couple questions. One, on the DAF link, when a donor or patron clicks that link from, say, a Facebook post, it takes them to a page, but the page just does not say which charity they're donating to. So I wondered about if I had done something wrong there, because I just copied the link out of the widget maker. And then on the widget, my second question, sorry if these are technical questions, but I'm here. I see that the widget only allows you to donate from Fidelity, Schwab, and BNY. Are there ways to get additional DAFs on there?
Yeah,
like say the Miami Foundation. I mean, there's local, things like that.
Yeah. So two good questions. If you, just to be technical for a second, if you fill out, go through that sort of wizard, almost step-by-step thing, that should create a URL, a sort of a link that will pre-populate your nonprofit when the person gets over to their DAF.
Okay, I did. I just have to, maybe I didn't copy the link right or something.
Yeah, but that's for sure the goal. On the what DAF sponsors, unfortunately, that's a pre-populated list. There is another widget out there. So I actually don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but if you sort of look up DAF widgets on Google, you may find others that are pre-populated in slightly different ways. I haven't seen a lot of examples of community foundations that show up there. So it's not sort of a panacea, but certainly for the big guys, the Schwabs and Fidelities, which really house sort of 70% of DAFs, at least it'll make folks' life is a little bit easier who has their DAFs.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and Jen and David, you didn't create that widget. You're just sort of sharing that as a. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. That they don't know all the technical aspects of it. It's just one tool that we can use for that widget, and it does it's taken upon the DAF organization to integrate with that widget, and not necessarily it's not on the nonprofit side. The DAF institution that holds the DAFs has to sign up somehow for that to be able to participate in that widget. So right now we only have those three major players currently.
That's right.
So Jen, I know you guys are experts, but just want to make sure that that I don't think you can answer all of our technical questions here. While we're waiting for other folks to have questions, I don't see any questions yet in the chat box. But Steve, you have a question?
Yeah. I did. I want to thank Dave and Jennifer. Great presentation, and to hear from Betty and Rob about their own experiences. You talked about 140 billion being, that's probably about 200 billion now, because all of that's invested, right? But do we have any idea how much is actually given on a yearly basis from the DAFs? Does anybody keep track of that?
They do. There's an organization called National Philanthropic Trust, where a lot of the data that we use came from. And they track quite closely, actually, kind of DAF inflows and outflows. I can tell you that 140 now is up from 120 last year. So that's a net number. So what that tells you is that even with all of the outflows, still, to your point, the investable corpus grew by a net of 20 billion. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's quite.
Yeah, I mean, I think the number that they like to say is that it's like 23 or 20% that's going out.
Right.
But that's clearly not nearly enough going out.
But that does suggest, over $20 billion going out. So, I mean, to be clear, we have a complicated relationship with that. I mean, they're great, they help, but it's just it's a sort of strength that's become a weakness as they've grown so large. But in any case, yeah, billions of dollars a year go out of DAFs for sure.
But not nearly enough given the times we're living in, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Jen and David, I do have some DAF. I work for Miami-Dade College Foundation. Here we're one of the largest educational institutions in the country, and I'm the development director for the foundation, and we do have a number of DAF holders. And one of the DAF holders in my portfolio reached out to me last year and said, I'm not going to give any money this year because there's no stipulation this year that I have to give any money for my DAF, because that minimum has been lifted for 2020 due to COVID. So, I will give again in 2021. So, that I thought was a very interesting, sort of, what would you say to a donor that has that kind of mentality?
Wow. I'd say, look at the need out there in this country right now. Yeah. Now's, instead of that, you're doing absolutely the opposite of what you should be doing. That money is sitting there where it could be put to work to help fight, food insecurity and racial justice and climate change and all the issues that are happening around us. So I would encourage that DAF holder to move the money through. It's very satisfying to feel like you can make a difference in the world. So
yeah, I'd just double down on that. We call our initiative Half My DAF. Remember, you can give half away and you still have half for that rainy day to use, donors who have that mindset. There are some donors, and this is not to trash donors generically, but there are some donors who do have the sense of, I kind of want to hold and wait. And we would encourage them to sort of take a more portfolio approach. Put some to work right now, because the problem probably isn't going to get any easier, over time if we don't start to address it sooner rather than later. And sure, hold some later, and put that to work next year and the year after. But we're a little bit of a, just do it now because you'll get better at it. And it's just says it's much more satisfying, frankly, than just having money in the bank.
Yeah, and we're not worried that there's not going to be more wealth created. We don't have the scarcity mindset. Let's give now and help people now.
There you go.
Yeah, no, Jen and David, thank you. That's actually, that's a tough fundraiser, pushback to give to a donor as well. So thank you for sharing your perspective on that. But there is a minimum. There is a minimum usually that DAFs do have to distribute out. Is that correct or incorrect? I thought that was a. No. So
There's
there's absolutely no minimum that folks have to give out every year. So they can just keep accumulating it forever.
Yeah,
That's exactly.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
There's
Okay.
no minimum rule. And that's why we're nudging. I mean, there is some discussion
Yeah.
around policy and so forth, but at the end of the day, this is going to have to come from us. So let's do
Right.
it.
Are there any other questions? I thought I saw a few hands up. Okay, it looks like Maite from Prospera has her hand up.
Hi. Well, first of all, thank you, Jen and David, for this amazing initiative. And also thank you for the collaboration with Prospera. And I would like to ask you one question, is that the people that they make, maybe they use their DAF from the beginning of the year, from January, they can apply or they can join to the challenge for this part, for this with this May 15.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
the person who I think your question is that they gave to you in January.
For example, yeah, in January or February, yeah.
I mean, we are taking a look at, we are asking people to commit to halving their DAF. We started February 1st.
Okay.
So if they look at the amount of money that was in their DAF on February 1st, and they commit to spending down half of that, we can be a little flexible. So once we get that commitment, and then maybe they gave to you the month before, we'll work with you on that.
Okay.
I mean, really, our goal is to inspire giving, and if people are going to make that commitment, that's great news.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. And I think this is, it seems like there's another question. I just want to say that, some of the big foundations, like, the Ford Foundation and others have actually, you would think in a time like this where those big foundations have so much of their assets in the stock market that they would sort of shrink their giving, to reduce risk. But, this is really mirroring what a lot of those major foundations have done, which is saying we need to invest now. So we're not only giving what we gave last year, we're going to give, we're taking out a bond. We're doing, some of these organizations even did bonds, to be able to give out even more in 2020 and 2021. So I think this is really, a great movement that's mirroring what the big foundations are doing in the individual giving side, and in the family philanthropic giving side. So I think that's really, really fantastic. Rob, I think you had your hand up.
I do, and just a very quick point in response to what Jen and David just said about that portfolio approach and having difficult conversations with donors. I should have mentioned that, at the end of our, December, we ran a capital campaign, our year-end fundraising campaign, and a woman who had been giving us $10,000 checks from her checking account surprised us by saying, actually, I do have a donor advised fund, and we needed both a scientist to do the mission and to hire our first development director, because it's, as you guys know, it's a profession. It's, we needed someone whose job it was to help us. So she put up 75,000 from her DAF if we could raise the other half in a month.
Awesome.
We did, by targeting DAF holders. So we raised the 75,000 match in 1 month, and managed to be able to hire a full-time scientist and a full-time development director in a month. But that then meant it was wildly uncomfortable for me to then go back to folks a month or two later and say, hey, here's this half my DAF thing. I wanted them to know that I wasn't asking them for more money. And it was wonderful to be able to just share the information and say, these are it's such a small subset of your donor community who are giving in this way that you know them already. And I was able to say to friends who had particular interests, I knew they had interests in racial or social justice or reproductive health. And I was able to say, just as for your information, because I know you care deeply about these other causes, you should know about this, because all of your charitable giving could make those other nonprofits eligible for matching funds. I'm not asking you to give us more money. We're thrilled for the support you've already given us, but I thought you should know about this. Now, in practice, if that gives them the nudge to tell you guys that they've given to us recently through their DAF, I hope that makes us eligible for a match. But I meant it in a very authentic, sincere way, that I also think that social and racial justice causes and reproductive health and education, those other nonprofits are also suffering and they should benefit. And so I think just as for your information communication, it allowed us to stay in touch with our donor advised fund holders, our most generous donors, without feeling like I was pressuring them to give more money. And so that's maybe
great.
another perspective.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you so much, Rob. Thank you. And I think Jen and David, I really appreciate Rob's participation in this, as well as Betty. But I think Rob's organization is a small to medium-sized organization, and a lot of times there's this misconception with DAFs that, you know, only universities or major health systems, you know, like only these large, or the United Way, you know, these large organizations have DAF donors and can leverage DAFs in a very successful way. So I really appreciated Rob sharing his story of how, you know, a very small, you know, a small grassroots organization is able to really leverage DAFs in a way. And I think a lot of us who are on this call, you know, do work for these, you know, smaller grassroots organizations that maybe think, oh, DAFs is like something super complex for, you know, really large organizations that have, you know, 25 people working there. You know, it really isn't. And I think that's one of the beauties of today's presentation. And thank you for sharing that with us.
We're going to actually have to get going on our side here, but if there
Sure.
are any final questions or comments, love to take them.
I think that's all. Thank you again. Thank you, Jen and David. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Betty. It's great to have Betty join us from our own Miami community on this call, and to see some success stories in our community. Thank you again so much to all of our panelists. We will be having sharing this presentation with everyone. We have been recording it, so we'll be sure to share with you. So if there are any colleagues or friends that you think would benefit from this, we just want to again thank you, Jen and David. Thank you, Rob and Betty. But really, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks to all of you. On behalf of Palm Beach and Miami, we really appreciate you.